everybody. It's a privilege to be here and have a chance to share my journey with you all. It's actually what motivates me the most in my life right now. Also, I work with people your age. They're my colleagues, my teammates at the restaurant. My children are my children. My sons are aged 23 to 30. So and that's the age group of my employees as well. So it's a real privilege for me to be there, and hopefully the biggest thing you can do after decades in the business, I mean, I won't tell you how many, but you can figure it out, is hopefully be able to give back a little bit along the way. And mostly you do that by your actions and your leadership, and not so much by your words and how you relate to your people and support them in their journeys. Because you can't help when you work in a 3,600 square foot building that has 35 employees in total, that to become close to these people. And so it's really been great, and I'm happy to have a chance to share with you. I don't really know if anything I share will be of use. I don't know where you are in your journeys or your level of passion for the hospitality industry. So, for some of you, this all may be very boring, and others may be perhaps thinking about, planning your life, your journey. Not everything happens as planned, I will tell you now. And so I guess I just give you a thought how to make it relevant, rather than if I start putting some years against these kind of milestones, you're going to think, wow, did they have electricity back then? I mean, it's pretty scary. So I thought I'd tell you approximately how old I was at the time, and so that some of these things happened. But I always, and of course, to Pat's point, how the heck did I end up, in an extremely entrepreneurial situation after over 30 years in corporate, in the corporate side, the multi-unit side of the restaurant industry, and it really is somewhat of a surprise to me as well. But hopefully, it will make some sense if I can explain it to you guys how we came to this point, and what lies ahead for my restaurant, which I'm going to talk a little bit about in a minute. So I won't get into detail about Real Fish right now, but that's kind of, if I had like about 10 points to say, where did it all start? There was a time, and actually saying this, I say it, there was a time when McDonald's was cool. Back in when dinosaurs roamed the land, and I was a high school student in upstate New York. I got a job at McDonald's, and it really influenced me. And it was a strong culture, very well organized, and it was really cool to work there. And I like to say it was cool, like Starbucks is cool, but Starbucks isn't cool anymore either. It's become a big institution, and it's still a very successful brand. But even Starbucks, there was a time when it was cool to work there, and maybe now it's become McDonald's. I don't know. But I started in McDonald's, and I think that's where the first inkling of my vocation, was kindled. Because for me, it's been a vocation. I don't know how to do anything else. I love the restaurant business, the hospitality industry. I've worked a little bit in the hotel side as well. I did the night audit in college. I was laughing, but whoever's doing the night audit, I can feel your pain. It's not worth it. But it was a good experience. So I started at McDonald's, and this is just kind of, some highlights of my journey along the way. I graduated from college with a degree in modern languages, and I would say that qualifies you to be a server. It's a great degree for absolutely nothing. And I had the opportunity to get a job at a prestigious restaurant in East Hampton, Long Island, and it definitely, in that time frame that I worked for them, I saw something very successful, working at a lot of levels, working for the customers, working for the owners, and it really made me think about what am I going to do with my life. And I had this kind of degree that really wasn't really that practical. And so I had, I decided, hey, I'm going to, I love this business. This is what I could do this the rest of my life. I could get up and go do this every day. And so I better figure out how to make that happen. So I took a kind of an unusual tack and I applied to a bunch of graduate schools, including Cornell, of course, which I don't know if you guys, Cornell still kind of stands out as one of the premier graduate programs for the hospitality industry. But in those days, it was, of course, the number one. And I also applied to University of Denver, University of Las Vegas, a bunch of other places. I got into Denver, which was cool because I'm a big skier, so that wasn't so bad. And I got an MBA, and that was weird. The hospitality industry had no idea what to do with an MBA when I graduated. So my vision was I was going to be an F&B guy in a big hotel, and I had read Arthur Haley's Hotel, which is an old book. It's a great book if you want to read something about, to really get you to test your, another one is Kitchen Confidential. If you read that and you're not laughing your butt off, you should get out of the business. Okay. Those are great, two great books. I wanted to be this, F&B guy and then work my way up to become a general manager. And I had this vision of, my first day as a GM, and I'm going to have all the employees in the ballroom and I'll give this inspirational speech. And that was my vision. And that's kind of what drove me through graduate school. And then along came these consulting firms, these accounting firms that had these hospitality practices doing market research and market studies for real estate development for hotels and other things and golf courses and crazy stuff. And they seduced me. And I kind of took a left-hand turn where most of my friends were going right into operations. I kind of bypassed that step, although I'd had a lot of years, waiting tables, tending bar, doing all that stuff. So I ended up spending 5 years in the consulting world, working for a couple of big accounting firms, getting exposed to a lot of different situations and experiences and businesses and really learning the financial side of the business very, very well. One of my clients pulled me in to help with a restaurant they had. It was their 9th restaurant in San Francisco. The Palm is a steakhouse chain that was founded in 1926 by 2 Italian immigrants and has had a very, very long run on the national stage as a premier steakhouse. And eventually that relationship led to a job offer as a director of operations. At age 31, I left Arthur Andersen and went back into operations at kind of a multi-unit level. So I kind of, I skipped the steak and ale Chili's, Houlihan stage. Those are some of the brands of my day. And I ended up at the Palm in operations. I was there for 15 years. I became president of the company. I helped grow the restaurant from 9 to 31 restaurants in 25 states and Mexico. We had an incredible run of growth and success. And probably there's a phrase that I use now, which is humble and hungry. You need to stay humble and hungry no matter what happens. I didn't know that then. That's a life lesson that I certainly learned. And when you have a lot of success, you begin to think that it's you're the reason everything's happening so wonderfully, which in fact, is very little has to do with you. It has to do with the team and the people and what you did and the systems and the infrastructure and a lot of good luck and wind at your back and many other things. In any event, I left the Palm with a lucrative job offer to go work for a guy named Al Copeland in New Orleans. And he founded Popeyes. He's an iconic, Ray Kroc level guy in our industry, another guy you should study and learn about, much more colorful than any other, I think, iconic restaurant figure you may come across. Al was a rags to riches story, grew up dirt poor in New Orleans, founded Popeyes, built it up to 1,000 restaurants, sold it, and his story goes on and on from there. So I got to work for Al long after he had sold Popeyes, and I ran his full service restaurants for about 4 years. Got recruited to run a small division of a public company in Nashville, Tennessee. I was there for 2 years, another steakhouse concept. and we got bought by another company, and took a little bit of money, not enough to retire on, but help with the kids' college, and got recruited by Hard Rock International to come down and run their entire cafe, company-owned cafe operation, which was worldwide, 65 Hard Rock cafes, 44 in the United States, and the rest in Europe. And that was the biggest span of control that I had ever achieved. It was a challenge. It was very political. It was a big, big beast. I mean, I went from running 10 restaurants to 65 worldwide. It was pretty crazy. I've always had this belief, that if someone was crazy enough to give me the opportunity to do something, then I was crazy enough to take him up on it and go for it and see how far we could take it. And that's kind of been, when I took over that job at the Palm, I was 31 years old. I really had no idea. The reason that they brought me on board was because I had worked for them in the past, and they knew me, and they had tried a couple of other folks in that role. And they were people from outside the company that didn't know the culture, and really offended a lot of the kind of more senior people in that company. And the culture was very, very strong, and they needed somebody that they felt would not throw the baby out with the bathwater when they tried to modernize the company, which is what we did. So Hard Rock was a very exciting opportunity for me. But I guess it wasn't going to be my last chapter. I was hoping it was, and I found myself after a few years. The board said, "Hey, this is a hard thing to hear. Hey, we're not going to renew your contract. We're going to pass." And so suddenly, at age whatever I was out again looking for a job. But it really, and I did go out and traveled the world and looked at a lot of cool opportunities, and looked at buying some things with some folks, and really trying to do something on my own, being outside of the corporate world after all those years, and kind of having a chance to spend some time reflecting. I was on the board of the National Restaurant Association, and there was this gentleman, Ted Balistreri, an icon in our industry. Okay. And big, Italian, gregarious, very funny guy, backslapping. "Hey, Freddie," he would come up to me. "Hey, Freddie, how are you?" And he would always say to me, Freddie, when are you going to open your own restaurant? You got to open your own restaurant." And I'd be like, "Ted, what are you talking about? I'm the COO of Hard Rock Cafe. I have a corner office with windows. I look out, I have a whiteboard. I'm a strategic guy." He saw something in me, and other people over the years have seen something in me that I really didn't want to recognize. I mean, the truth is, I love the business. It's in my heart and soul, and I love people. I love the nitty gritty of it. And at Hard Rock, I finally think I got myself to such a place where I couldn't wrap my arms around it anymore, and I couldn't touch the people, and I couldn't really feel, who is Fred? What is he? Who is this guy in this office in Orlando? To the folks in Nice or Albuquerque or wherever. So that led me to this next chapter in my life, and I've always been someone that is thinking about concepts, stealing menus. You have to steal the menus, by the way. You can't just download them off the internet. You have to steal the actual menu from the restaurant. I've never stolen a stamp. Okay, I don't steal anything. But when it comes to research and development, you got to have the menu. My office is filled with menus that I've stolen, and you got to take a lot of pictures. So I'm always working on a concept, and we moved to Florida from Nashville, living in Orlando in Baldwin Park, and eating out and dining around, and having dined all over the world and seen so many things in my career, been so blessed to be able to have all these experiences. I would say to my wife, when we're on a peninsula, we're surrounded by water, why are there no fish restaurants? And the only fish restaurants that there are chains. They're usually high end or they're low end, and nobody's really tapping into the Southern culture and history of Central Florida. It's a very southern part of the world, and no one's really tapping into the local seafood situation. We're 50 miles from the coast. When I lived in DC, we were 80 miles from the Atlantic Ocean, but there were so many seafood restaurants that you you couldn't, you could go anywhere and see and get great seafood. But for some reason in Orlando, that wasn't the case. So, the idea of a restaurant that was tied to Southern traditions and inspired by a lot of Southern coastal restaurants that dot the landscape throughout both coasts of Florida, into the Panhandle and up along the East Coast into the Carolinas and Georgia, often referred to as fish camps, but not necessarily just fish camps, but restaurants that derived most of their proteins from local waters and were tied to and respectful of the traditions of the South. And so, in my years after Hard Rock, driving around the state, I did a lot of consulting. I had a lot of windshield time. I had a lot of time to eat different restaurants, steal menus. I came up with this idea. It's not an original idea. I think the restaurant industry, to a large extent, is about, a guy goes to Italy and eats at 20 restaurants and comes back and opens an Italian restaurant. I mean, this guy was traveling around the South, had been a Yankee that moved to New Orleans, lived in New Orleans for 4 years, lived in Nashville, became in love. I fell in love with Southern culture, with Southern values in terms of respect and politeness, and don't manage with anger. Every day, let every day be. If you walk down the street in New Orleans today, I guarantee you, in the financial district at 9 o'clock in the morning, people walking by in suits will say good morning to you as you walk by. And to me, that's what the South is all about. There's this politeness and just a culture that I really admire. And there's real tradition. The food of the South is really anchored in place. And I think that's why Southern food has become so popular in the last couple of years, in the last 20 years, say, last 10, 15 years, because it's a real indigenous cuisine and it has real identity. So this was the idea behind Real Fish. We were going to create something authentic. We were going to try to bring the coast inland. And, that it wasn't a proven idea. Could you have a coastal concept in an inland setting? And, these were kind of the three tenets that we based the concept on. The last one, also very important, I don't know how much you guys are tapped into what's going on with our oceans, but it's a 911 emergency of what we're doing to our oceans, and the percentage of ocean that actually is able to sustain life at the level that it was intended to is a fraction. You would be shocked. And since I was aware of it, but ever since I've opened the restaurant, and I've been supportive of the Coastal Conservation Association and other organizations, and I've had many people dining with me that are tied into what's going on. You guys should get interested in that stuff, because we're killing our oceans and all of the wonderful fish and marine life that live there. So it's something to get involved with. And we wanted Real Fish to be about more than just making money. These are my core values. I wrote this in 20 minutes 4 years ago. And it's how we try to, it's kind of the filter that we try to run our business by. It's important to have core values. It's important to build a culture. I think if you look at successful restaurant concepts today, whether they're independent or multi-concept, the thing nowadays isn't so much building a chain. It's having the infrastructure to support multiple concepts in a local market and be able to go around and put your hands on every restaurant. But of course, chains are still important, and the best chains have strong cultures. And you start with a set of core values that everybody understands, and you do your best to make sure that you bring people on board who share those values. Try to identify those that don't share those values, and try to get them off the bus. We call it the spiel, right? The restaurant is a product of my life and places I've worked and the things that I've done. The Palm, before I got there, had no written menu. And the whole menu was recited verbally. Hey, you look like lobster to me. You like a lobster? How about a steak? Hey, you want some red sauce? You want some white sauce? You forget about it, And that was working, and then it wasn't working. So we put a menu in at the Palm, and that had a big impact. But at Real Fish, we have a core menu, and I'll give you the website, and you can check out in a minute the website, and you can check out the menus. We have a core menu. You have to have a core menu because you need to be able to plan and manage costs and understand, kind of in a little bit of a strategic way, what you'd like your theoretical food cost to be. But the blackboard, as we call it, is the heart and soul of our restaurant, and that's where we really play in with local seafood. We only serve wild caught Florida shrimp. We get them either from Mayport, which is a fishing port in Jacksonville, or we get them from Cape Canaveral. We bring in all kinds of snapper, grouper, sheep's head, swordfish. We tell you where it was caught, when it was caught. Sometimes we know it was Captain Bob, off the starboard bow on a rising tide at 4:30 in the morning near Madeira Beach. We can sometimes tell you exactly where the fish were caught. They do some tagging now, and we like to let people know that. So every day, the restaurant is Real Fish is a contemporary remake of a Southern Fish Camp, and we hit all the bases in terms of what people love is fried seafood, and we do it really, really well. We have state-of-the-art fryers. We use canola oil, hyperallergenic canola oil, and our fried food is excellent. We do a lot of salads. We make them all to order. Our appetizers kind of focus on Southern culinary profiles, but we walk them out. We do fried green tomatoes, but it's floated on a bed of red pepper vinaigrette dressing that we make from scratch, and we crumble goat cheese on top. Our fish dip, which is known as Fred's Fabulous Fish Dip, isn't even a dip. We just smoke trout. We fold it lightly into a mayonnaise-based dressing. We cut some julienne green apples in there, and boom, we're off to the races. So the spiel, the servers have to go through the spiel with every guest. We make all the desserts in-house. I hope that gives you a little bit of a flavor. The restaurant just celebrated its 4th anniversary this February. And as Pat was alluding to, it's been a journey, so I guess I could just pause to say, to talk about that. So, when we conceived of Real Fish, we were all a bunch of corporate guys. And I wrote this little business plan, a few pages. I showed it to a couple people, and they were like, wow, this is really cool, a good idea. I like this idea. Well, okay, I need $1 million. I raised the money in 5 days. I couldn't believe it. I mean, the thing that had held me back all these years was, I don't want to give up ownership. I don't want to, end up raising all this money and only owning 10% of the restaurant. And, what's the point of that? So I retained a majority interest in the restaurant. I raised $1 million in 5 days. We put the deal together, and we launched the restaurant. Found a location. I mean, I should probably save time for questions if there are any, because I could go into a lot of details about, and you guys might really be interested in this, because in my journey, what I found, many, if not all of you people in our industry at your age dream of owning their own restaurant. I've interviewed, thousands of people for jobs in my career. And when you ask them, what do you really want to do? Where do you see yourselves in 5 years or 10 years? They say, well, I want to own my own place. And that's innate in restaurateurs or in hospitality people. We want to own. Ownership is a huge thing for us, and it motivates us. That's why a lot of great chains have been able to tap into that with some type of managing partner type incentive program. And that's why, for example, Outback was so successful building their empire, again, before your time, but they really did that. They made their managers owners. So, the transition of taking the chain guy, I spoke on a panel at the Florida the FRLA Operations and Marketing Summit a couple of years ago. And ironically, the panel was what the little guys need to learn from the big guys. So they had some people like me who had been on the corporate side, but we're now entrepreneurs trying to distill the things we learned from being in corporate and how we were using them in day-to-day life. My presentation was about the opposite. I had to forget 90% of what I learned in the corporate world in order to be successful running RealFish. And it took me, unfortunately, almost 3 years to do that, much to my investors' dismay. But they hung in there with me. And right when we had it figured out and we were really rolling, and coming into the end of year 3, second half of 2019, because we really had started to build some momentum with the guests, and we had figured out the costs. And I don't even say I had a slight quality of life. I don't know, maybe a little bit of a quality of life. And boom, the recession hit. The pandemic hits us. Like, what? Wait a second. I'm exhausted. Stop. We just got things working. Things are great. Stop it. January and February of 2020 were the best 2 months in the history of the restaurant. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, we're closed. Boom, done. Wow. I was like, I'm just going to lie down and let the train roll over me now. This has got to be my time to just say, forget it. But of course, relentless perseverance. That is innate, and in me and in many people in our of my era, I don't know. I can't speak to you guys, your generation, but I don't give up, and my passion for this business, for some reason, is inextinguishable. Yes, it's proven to be. I'm still the geek that after getting home at 2:00 in the morning, gets up and goes to work, and I'm running into work, and I'm on the phone, and I'm ready to go at it every day. And I don't know where that comes from, but it's in there, so I roll with it. This is kind of some stats on our restaurant, and you can check us out online. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We're very active. We're not as active on social media as we should be. I get it. I do it. I love it. And I work with it as best I can. We're very active on email, and that may sound old school to you guys, but we have over 7,000 members in our e-club. They probably skew a little older, in terms of age group, but when we drop email with opportunities, value add propositions, or whatever we may do, they come, and it moves the needle big time. And it's, I spend a few $100 a month on the infrastructure for that, and the ROI is immediate. I could do a whole lecture for you guys on restaurant marketing and what works and what doesn't. So maybe that's for another day. I think the most important thing about RealFish is that we have been guest focused, intensely guest focused from day one. And I learned, if you go back to the core value slide, being on the, hospitality, being on the guest side in every situation. That I didn't invent that. That's Danny Meyer's phraseology. Danny Meyer founded Shake Shack, but even many years, but he's been a leader in our industry for decades. He has a great book called Setting the Table. You should read that book. That's another great book that is fundamental, I think, to our industry. And generosity, really giving back to the guests right away. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And those two values in particular, plus a passion for quality, never sacrificing on quality. When I was in the chain world, I think I had a little bit of a reputation for being a guy that gave too much. That why are you doing that? Is the guest really going to give you credit for that? And that's a good question. I mean, really, you got to know your guest, right? I mean, why buy wild-caught Florida shrimp if frozen shrimp from China are fine? I mean, they're disgusting, but some people think they're great. Some people would like to have 25 shrimp from China instead of 8 shrimp from Florida. Me, I wouldn't. So those things kind of fueled us, and that's why I kind of wanted to focus on the last point here, which was, throughout the 4 years that we've been open, our guest satisfaction ratings have been really, really high. And I respond to every single review myself, good and bad. And I don't take the bad ones. They don't, well, sometimes they disappoint me deeply, and sometimes they seem very unfair. But I have been able to recover many, many situations where I think a lot of other people would be like, "Are you kidding me?" So, that's kind of been the tenets of our success, as far as that goes. And let me see, what's my last slide look like? Yeah. So at Copeland's, we used to say it's all about the food. This is some food porn of ours. But I don't really believe that. It is all about the food, but it's about much more. It's about the experience, and everything has to be in sync. And we do our very, very best to deliver a great experience, and that includes warm Southern hospitality and a great atmosphere, good music, attentiveness, name recognition, all the things that people want. And we listen to our guests. If they say, "Gee, Fred, the shrimp seem very salty today," I will definitely, and we do line checks. Line checks are the most important thing in operations. Before you go out and face the guest in that shift, you personally, as the dining room manager or the person that's guest facing, need to taste everything, because you need to know when the guest says to you, "Hey, the ceviche seems a little mushy today," but you haven't tasted the ceviche. You're like, "Oh, is it?" You think to yourself, "I don't know. Maybe he's right. I don't know. Is he right? Is he wrong? Is it mushy?" But if it should never get to that point. So anyway, that's kind of my story. For once, I kept things on time. Verbal efficiency is not one of my strengths, but I hope that helped or raised some questions, or some, if you're thinking about your life journey. I guess if I had to sum my life up, my career, I was a guy that really didn't know what he wanted to do with his life. And, I was able to recognize that I had a passion for something. I followed that passion, and, it has sustained me through everything that goes on in your life. I've been married twice. I raised 3 sons. There have been ups and downs along the way, but I've always believed in myself and in my, passion for this industry. And I'm very excited that Real Fish is showing very promising signs. I try to temper my characterization of the situation, but we have come through this thing with flying colors, I guess. One of the coolest things that happened in the 7 weeks we were closed. So as I said, I came from, we were literally on the verge of this incredible breakthrough with the business after 3 years of 80-hour weeks, 7 days a week. Don't kid yourself. Owning a restaurant is a life-changing experience. You will have no other life. It is your life, and that's just the way it is, and you have to accept it. And down the road, you'll be able to scale it, get some good people in there. But in the beginning, it has to be you. And I think I made that mistake in the beginning. I had a couple of general managers. It took me a while to figure out that we weren't ready for that. So our doors are closed. I fired 30 people, my kids, my children, basically, right? There's my wife, myself, my 2 managers, my kitchen manager, my dining room manager. They're working at 50% salary. We're taking nothing out of the business. 30 people are unemployed. The other people were paying, as needed, a couple cooks, a couple servers to help with takeout, delivery. And the thing that was amazing for us was the outpouring of love and emotional connection from our customers. And we didn't really, we knew that we were connecting with people in some way. That's what you hope for. You want Danny Meyer again, to hear the expression, "This is my favorite restaurant," that Danny Meyer says. That's the highest accolade that any guest can bestow upon it. Favorite is a word. It's, you know, it encompasses so many different emotions and ideas for someone to bestow that upon you. And here we were closed and you know, scrapping to just keep enough money coming in to cover, just to keep the lights on. And all these people came out of the woodwork to pick up food from us. And it was like Chick-fil-A down the block in front of the restaurant. I mean, we never did takeout. I mean, takeout for a restaurant like ours, you know, for a seafood restaurant, it's a nightmare. I mean, there's a million combinations, and I don't want this sauce, or I want this on the side, or I want, you know, and you know, you're trying to package all this stuff, and you go crazy. And we were doing a terrible job at it. I mean, how many times I would have to jump in my car and drive to some person's house because we forgot, you know, their key lime pie, or we forgot their extra side of ranch, or whatever the heck, you know. Oh, there's Fred. He was pulled up in front of the house, you know. But the emotional connection that we had established with our guests, I had no idea how strong it was. And I think for us, that was almost it was like a synergistic boost, that people realized that they cared about the restaurant and that they could get involved in helping us survive. And so you literally, you know, the people we'd have 15 cars in line to pick up food. It was crazy. And my wife and I would be out there handing them out, you know, and, you know, putting them in the back seat, putting them in the trunk. I mean, everybody's super cautious, right? And that was really, really powerful for us. And, you know, even though we were broke, you know, and we didn't know really how we were going to reopen, there was, you know, again, I look back now with hindsight, and I see that many other restaurants in many other states and my colleagues had it much worse. So I don't want to sound like a victim. We were very lucky in retrospect. But in the beginning, you just didn't know what was coming. You had no idea. So all that uncertainty was incredibly stressful. But things did stabilize. And amazingly, excuse me, even at 50% occupancy, when we were allowed to reopen, we were doing good numbers. And I really had to play it down with the guests because they really didn't want to hear that we were kicking ass. I didn't know where to put the people. I mean, it was like, oh yeah, things are getting a little bit, how is everything? Oh yeah, yeah, it's coming back, you know. Meanwhile, we were crushing it. It's been like that ever since. And then we won Best Seafood in Orlando Magazine at the end of last year, fall, and then we won Best Seafood in Orlando Sentinel just about 5 or 6 weeks ago. And those things don't mean anything, but you know, I mean, they, you know, they do, they don't. You don't want to make it a big deal, but certainly it's a nice thing to have. And so here we are. You know, what's next for Real Fish? A group of my investors just bought our building, so that's pretty exciting. Our landlord got freaked out by me not paying rent during the pandemic. And in fact, at the end of the day, I only did not pay him 1 month's rent, which he begrudgingly, he was a great guy, a Greek gentleman, 77 years old, used to own the restaurant, was a Greek restaurant 40 years ago. You know, George, I could do my George imitations. Fred, why are you doing this to me? What are you doing? You must pay rent. Anyway, George let me off 1 month's rent, and then in May or June, he called me and said of last year and said, I want to sell the building, and do you want to buy it? And so it was, you know, so we bought it, and that's exciting, and it's gonna have a nice kind of synergistic effect with the group that owns the restaurant, Orlando Coast Investors, and then there's WP Orange LLC that owns the building, and it's going to be a very symbiotic thing. And what that's going to do, it's going to accelerate the returns to the investors. It's going to make the restaurant financially much more stable. And then what's next? I mean, the original idea behind Real Fish was we were going to grow it. You know, we were going to scale it, and we were going to have that it was, you know, we designed it to be a scalable, growable concept. Along the way, you know, I was, you know, the reality stripped me of a lot of, not of those aspirations, but it just, the reality of building the heart and soul of the restaurant was much more nitty gritty and hands on and much harder than I thought it was going to be. I thought we'd be at this point after 18 months, at the most. And, it turned out maybe it would have been 3 years if we hadn't hit the pandemic. But here we are. So we're in a strong place. I repeat the mantra, humble and hungry, to myself and to my team all the time. I tell them, listen, it was easier when we were the underdog. It was a lot easier when we were trying to get there. And now that we think we're here, we could screw it up tomorrow. And then we turn around and do screw it up, and we're going to have a terrible shift. I mean, I had, the volume, and then making sure you have enough employees. Now the big challenge our industry is facing is we don't have enough staff. We're busy. We're not the only ones, people are busy. I mean, I was reading today in the Wall Street Journal. I want to say Diamond. I can't think of his first name, but he's one of the big investment guys. He's predicting a huge boom. That the economy is going to go through a huge economic growth period, and a lot of people are saying that. So it's interesting. And make sure we have the people, and that we can execute and maintain our standards. And I think we're feeling that, and everyone in the industry is feeling that, whether it's a little mom and pop shop like mine, or whether it's Miller's Ale House, or whether it's it's Darden or Red Lobster or whatever. So it's interesting. We're in a good place. It's been a journey. Let me tell you this. So because Pat will probably want me to say this, I love being an entrepreneur. I love being out of the corporate world. I don't miss the 7:15 a.m. calls with the CFO and the CEO from wherever we were in the world to run my numbers through, and all the things we had to do. I don't miss the politics at all, which I was terrible at. I love being close to the guest. My only wish is that I had a little bit of time to, for myself, which, I don't. So that's just the way it is. But, maybe in the future that will be, I think the next 4 years will be really good years for us, buying our own building and the things we've done. Will we open another restaurant? We might. I don't know. I think Real Fish is scalable. Ironically, if we open another restaurant, maybe it will be a cousin of Real Fish, but maybe not exactly. Or maybe it will. I mean, I think we could open on the west side of town and really have some success over there. We'll see. So I don't know.
Okay, excellent, Fred. So you know what? With your blessing, Fred, I'd like to open this up for some questions now from the students. And I have a list here too, but I don't want to usurp them. I have to be careful, because then I can start a conversation with you and they're not going to get a word in edgewise, which we don't want to do. But I'm going to open it to Group B first, B Bravo. And so Group B students, take it away. Who wants to go first? Okay, Rachel, go ahead. You got to turn your microphone on. Good.
Okay. So my question kind of goes back to whenever you were creating the concept for Real Fish, you talked about wanting to create a place that has this kind of awareness for the ocean environments and everything. So have you been able to do that at all and seen some effect from that?
Yeah, I took this page from Hard Rock, and there's so much people don't know about Hard Rock, but it's an incredibly philanthropic organization. And I was blown away by the level of grassroots activism that they have institutionalized worldwide in all their cafes. So we have taken a page from that book, there's two things that we do. We donate a percentage of proceeds to events that we run throughout the year to the Coastal Conservation Association, and we also do beach cleanup days once a quarter. The team gets together. It's very challenging for us because we all work, for incredible hours, but we go out and we pick up garbage, and the Coastal Conservation Association organizes a lot of that, but also the various counties have points of contact. They give you the garbage things and the bags and everything, and so we go have a beach day, and then we go have lunch somewhere, and that's been the main thing that we've done to keep the idea alive. And I also use the same technique that Hard Rock used, where management doesn't do this. Crew members get involved and become the leaders and the organizers of these events, so that it's actually I go, but I'm actually just a participant. I didn't set it up. I didn't make the contact. I didn't, I didn't do the, I guide them. I show them where, so that's pretty much what we do. And I think we can do more. There's a concept in New York called Seymours that I follow, SEAMRES, and they're similar to us, and they have 6 units. They make it more a part of their daily communication in their social media and in their emails, and I'd like to do more with that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Good. Thanks, Rachel. Okay, another person from Group B who wants to go next. Go ahead, Analia, and then Tyler.
Hello. So when you were talking about your culture, you were talking about how important it is just to build employees that will have that kind of culture that you have, that you've created within your business. And I was wondering what some of the main things that you look for to keep that culture alive.
That's a great question. You want to, hiring is a pivotal moment in your business, and in every hire is a decision. And it's interesting too, the culture of the dining room versus the culture of the kitchen, and the people that you look for.
Yes.
But it really is about hiring the person and trying to identify, in a very, obviously chains have incredible ways to do that, and Baker's Holloway and all the things that we did back then. She's and the jobs that I applied for at a C level, where you'd spend a day with a corporate psychologist. The crazy stuff that they do to try to get in your head to make sure they're hiring the person that's going to fit the organization. So in our case, old school, when you sit down with them across from a table, you have a cup of coffee and hang out with them for 20 minutes, you ask them. I usually go off the script, and I ask them, legal questions, about their lives and where they grew up and stuff like that. So you just try to hire the right people, and you try not to hire assholes.
Yeah.
I got a story about that, but I'll save it for another day.
Oh,
That is really the key, when you say good morning to someone, you want them to say good morning back, not what's good about it.
Yeah.
Look, From Good to Great is a book. I'm sure it's dated now. It influenced me greatly. I loved it because it had statistical basis for its points of view. It didn't come with a point of view. The point of view grew from a tremendous amount of research. And, in the book, it identifies these companies that were able to maintain above average returns in the public market for 11 years and identifies commonalities in those companies. And, core values and having, well-defined cultures was one of the common things about that. And of course, Jack Welch, who again, nobody remembers, probably like George Washington. Jack Welch was this iconic CEO of General Electric, and his belief in core values. And I would run the matrix when I was in the you have kind of performance and values on a simple XY axis, and it's a 4-box quadrant, simple as hell. And you have high values, high performance in one side, and you have low values, low performance on the opposite side, and then you have in between. And you kind of got to put your employees in that box. See where they fit, and what's really tempting in our industry, unfortunately, and I've done it, is you keep the high performance, low value people on way too long because they're getting it done for you. So that's it's a management thing. It's putting the values out there, when they're onboarded and they're on the wall of the ice machine, and they're on and it's in the communication. Do you talk about it all the time? We try to talk about it all the time, but I think it's also living the values yourself as a leader is the most important. Being respectful, being professional, trying not to manage with anger. Setting the role, and for us, it's so being on the guest side in every situation. And so what that means to me is that my servers will come to me when there's a problem, and they'll come to me when there's a problem on another table. I mean, not all of them, but the best of them will say, "Hey, Fred, I walked by 402. I didn't like the look on their faces. They didn't seem happy. You should go over there." And conversely, when something's going really well, they'll come and tell me, you should go to that table. They were complimenting the restaurant. You should go say hi to those guys. And, so people get involved in this hospitality idea. And that's the most powerful thing. But everything, all those core values are important. A lot of it has to do more with me, not sacrificing quality or cutting corners, being willing to be generous to guests. And we make things right, And so they see you doing that and you act it out and you live it. You have to live the values. And I just fired a guy that I really respected. He's been with me for 2 years, and I kept him way too long. He's from New Orleans, which, I have a soft spot in my heart for everybody from New Orleans because I love that city and I lived there and it had a big impact on me. He had a photographic memory. He could spiel every oyster. We have as many as a dozen different oysters at any given time, and you have to tell the guests about every oyster if they want you to. What the difference in flavor profiles, where it came from, the cup size, the shape of the cup, shallow, deep, salinity, all these different things. This guy would nail it. But man, when he wasn't on, he wasn't on. And, Sunday night it was time. So, I don't know if that helps, but it's kind of a rambling answer.
No, it does. Thank you. And thank you for all the book suggestions.
Thank you.
Well, I don't even think these books are even in print anymore.
Huh?
I don't know if these books are even in print. No, I'm kidding. They're
good
books. No, I mean, really, Kitchen Confidential should be your first read.
I have read that one, but definitely the Paul one and the other one I will read.
Confidential is a little salty.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's fun.
I mean, you got to love that part of the business to begin with. I think that's the point. Kitchen Confidential is politically incorrect to the max, but I kind of feel like we need that right now.
It's very entertaining too. Yeah. You can't put it down. Thank you, Analia. Thanks, Fred. Okay, Tyler, you're next.
I guess what would you say is the most difficult part in like committing and following through when starting or opening up a business of your own?
Sure. Well, I think the most difficult part is overcoming the obstacles that you've put in place for yourself. And then the things that you think are going to be easy turn out to be hard. I mean, that's the crazy thing is that, I had thought about opening my own business or many times over the years. And what stopped me really was the belief that that if I raised the money, I was going to have to give up way too much of the ownership. Because, you don't want to bust your butt for 5% of the business, right? I mean, you want to feel like, you're killing. I mean, I'm killing myself in this restaurant, but I own 60% of the restaurant. So the vast majority of what comes out of the restaurant comes to me, and that was my biggest barrier. But things transpired to where I found myself in a situation where this was what I was going to do. And so I put my mind to it. I wrote a business plan. I went out there, and it turned out that by the grace of God, and I am, a big man of faith. I will say that I've managed to keep the God word out of my presentation until now, but I do give credit to him for a lot of what's happened. But by the grace of God, I had built a reputation, I guess, in the industry where raising the money was the easy part. Then I thought the easy part was going to be opening it and scaling it and growing it, because I've been running multi-unit concepts my whole life. That turned out to be the hardest part. So, I think the thing is, don't give up, and keep assessing and looking and trying not to be blind to what's working and what's not working.
Good. Thank you, Fred. Good question. Thanks, Tyler. Okay, another person from Group B who wants to go next. Go ahead, Travis.
My question is, can you explain the decision behind having a restaurant in Orlando versus somewhere on the coast?
Yeah. Well, okay. So that's a great question. That's a great question. So and I have a lot to say about that. I'll try to be brief. It really it was an evolution of thinking. I was looking at, with a private equity group out of Atlanta, acquiring a small chain in Northern Florida. And we worked on the project for a few months, and they ended up not wanting to do the deal, which happens. But in working with them on it, I really thought I saw some. I did see a lot of coastal restaurants, and ate in a lot of and got a lot of experience with that type of restaurant. And I thought the thing that really stopped them from making the investment was all the restaurants were on the coast, and it was a seafood concept on the coast. And I'm holding up Bonefish Grill as an example of a restaurant that never even had a coastal vibe. I mean, and they grew to 200 units. So I'm trying to show them, hey, look, we can take this thing, but they backed out. So for me, it was a proof of concept. In order for so to tell you the evolution of where I've been, a lot of this just isn't planned. I mean, I wish I could tell you that my life was planned. I had a vision, I had passion. I wanted to be a leader. I wanted to, inspire and work with people. And then my career kind of went where it went. But after that project didn't happen, I became resolved to do something like that on my own. And the first thing I wanted to do was prove that we could do it in an inland setting. And this was a big test. And I will tell you, I have learned that maybe it wasn't a great decision. In other words, we've had to really, really work hard to get the volume to where it is now, where it's finally, after 4 years, starting to reflect the numbers that I pro formed 4 years ago, to be completely honest, because what I've learned is that when you're on the coast and four different people are trying to talk about where they're going to go out to eat that night, they're all getting fish. There's no question. You're on the coast. We're getting fish, right? But, right, we're in New Smyrna, man. We're getting fish. I mean, hey, it's got to be fresh, which, by the way, usually it's not. Most coastal restaurants totally take advantage of customers because they think it's fresh. I find that shocking, but true. But when you're in Orlando and four people get together and say, where are you going to go out to eat? One guy says Italian, one guy says Chinese, one guy says steak, one guy says fish. And you realize that we're a niche. And that was the unknown at the time I created the concept, that everybody stepped into this idea. They loved the concept, but it had to prove itself that you could create a coastal concept in an inland setting. Now the supply chain piece has been easy. Okay. That was a question mark. We were more concerned about, can I get those shrimp from Mayport? Can I get the fresh fish from Madeira Beach? And that has been easy. We get our oysters to our back dock now. I mean, we literally have established the same supply chain. It doesn't matter. I could be 5 miles from the ocean or a mile from the ocean or 50 miles. I'm getting the same fish they're getting. I might be getting better fish than them. But from the guest perception standpoint, the thing I didn't realize was that a seafood restaurant is just one of many concept options, genres that a guest has to choose from when you're away from the water, when you're on the water. When you're in Key West, what are you going to eat, right? You can eat fish. So that's a really good question. I hope I answered it. But it was an intentional decision to try to prove the concept. I thought it was going to be a lot easier than it turned out to be. But at the end of the day, we've worked really hard to help our guests recognize what we're trying to do. And it wasn't immediately apparent. Like, what are we trying to do? We're trying to give you an authentic coastal experience, probably better than 90% of the coastal restaurants you're going to eat at in terms of freshness and commitment to quality. And that has been a one guest at a time. In the beginning of 2019, which was a tough time for us, we came very close to closing at the end of 2018. It just, there were a lot of good things to say about the restaurant. Like I said, the guest satisfaction scores were always top notch, but the volume just wasn't there. And the seasonality was really killing us. There are seasonal factors that play out in Winter Park, and just, the summers were terrible. And, and then we'd be busy for 3 or 4 months. And we worked our way through that. And I had a meeting with my biggest investor in the beginning of 2019. And he asked me, you play golf? I said, yeah, I play golf terribly. But he goes, well, what do you think about on your backswing? And I said, okay, whatever, head down, whatever. He goes, well, what do you think about on your backswing with the restaurant? What's your backswing? And I totally out of the blue, he asked me this question. I said, one guest at a time. And that was my epiphany. I had reached this point where I realized, okay, I don't know if this thing is working. It doesn't, but I'm going to just focus on one guest at a time one guest at a time every night, even on the slowest night when there's only 5 tables, one guest, one guest, one guest, one guest, one guest. And we broke through, we just broke through. So it's a great question. I don't know that's why I'm saying, if I do another restaurant, will it be Real Fish exactly? Or maybe it'll be a cousin of Real Fish. I don't, that's exactly why. Cause it's been, a lot harder than I thought to build that trust and that idea and build that market, because people have other choices, a lot of other choices when you're a seafood restaurant in the middle of the state, 40, 45, 50 miles from the ocean. But yeah.
You don't have to deal with the season.
That was great. Thank you, Travis. That was a great question. Fred, what a thoughtful answer that was. Before I go to the next student, I just do have to make one comment that it's interesting you chose that phrase. My mentor passed away this year. Jerry Vallon was the founding dean of UNLV's hospitality program. And, I said to Jerry often, how did you build, I went to UNLV when I was in the first graduating class. There were 20 students. And how did you build it to close to 3,000? You know what his answer was? One student at a time.
No kidding, right? Yeah.
Which is fascinating. Yeah.
It somehow helps you to not be overwhelmed and just keep, and just keep fighting,
Yeah. Okay. We have, who else from group B Bravo? We have Juan and Seth. Do either of you have a question? Juan, I think you were first.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for the industry and everything, what makes an effective leader?
My role model for effective leadership is a gentleman named Philip J. Hickey, who has been in our industry longer than I have. He's not much older than me. He's only about 4 or 5 years older than me. What I respect about Phil, many things I respect about him. His humbleness is amazing. Obviously, he has incredible mental capacity, which is God-given. But I would travel around with Phil, and we'd walk into restaurants from chains that he had once run. Had been CEO of years before, and to a unit level in Manhattan. And the staff would come out from behind the bar or from behind the kitchen and greet him, and he would remember their names personally. And he had this incredible relationship with his people. And, and that's, to me, that's really impactful as a leader. I don't know how to translate that, how he does that. So maybe I can give you another thought about, leadership. I think there are 4 or 5 things that I try to remind myself of every day, and I almost always break at least one of them before I get to the first traffic light going into work. Be gracious, be even-tempered, never manage with anger, be respectful, which means don't talk about another person to another person, because they then infer that you would do the same thing to them, right? Be professional, which means a lot of things, right? Tremendous amount of things in terms of how you behave with others, with coworkers. But it also means, watch your language. Don't, it's really easy in our business to throw the F word around and talk like that. Be mindful, which is really hard. It's just like, don't lose track of where you are, like your internal compass in the day-to-day life as you move through the business, and all the stress is piling up on you and you have all these things going on. Be mindful of what's happening around you, because there are clues to what you're doing and what you're doing right and wrong that you can miss. But it turns out they're giant signposts that you run right by, And the last one, which is, so Phil, who has coached me through many job interviews as I left Hard Rock and tried to continue my C-level career, and be a good listener. this is really hard for me. Don't wait till the other person stops talking before you talk, and don't necessarily feel like you have to pile on to what they said with another story about yourself, and this helps me with guests too, by the way. I mean, I'm a very humble guy, but I will tell you, I'm amazing with guests because I love it. I mean, I love it. It's my passion. I mean, I love hanging out with them. I love hearing their stories. And, but it's the same thing with employees, when they're talking to you, don't come back with my dog is bigger than your dog, listen. And before you speak. So that was a big one. Phil used to hit me with a lot. So
good advice, Fred. Thank you very much. That was great. I mean, what a succinct, kind of a recap of leadership. Seth, we're going to have to let you be the first 2 weeks from today. Okay. Would you like to do that? You can be the first. We won't usurp.
Yeah, that's okay.
Good, because we're running out of time. I do want to just mention a couple of things, Fred. You mentioned a few books, and all kidding aside, the books you mentioned, Arthur Haley's book Hotel is a very old book, but it's a great read if any of you just like a good novel. It's really good. But even though the book is it's probably 60 years old now, but the concepts have not changed that are in the book. The way we do things have changed, but the concepts haven't changed. It's a great book. You ought to read it. It's a good management book. The other book, Danny Meyer, Setting the Table, it's about 15 years old now, 14. I still use it when I teach my graduate course in restaurant management. As Fred said, that book it's not a textbook. It's a very well-written book. It's somewhere a cross between a novel and a textbook. Right. I would say, and it's an excellent book. So I would urge you all to read those books. They're really, really good. Fred, I have a question for you. Just a comment. First of all, do you know a fellow named Ed Childs?
I don't.
Okay, so he owns 3 restaurants here on the beach.
I'd like to know.
No longer can you do on this part of the Gulf Coast, but he was grandfathered in, and his father was Lawton Childs, the former governor of Florida. Wow. But Ed is passionate about the water and taking care of the ocean, particularly clam beds here. So if you ever run across him,
I'd like to. Yeah, if you want to maybe connect us, because I'd like to do more. I've been a little frustrated that I haven't been able to find an association that is more focused on commercial fishing as opposed to sports fishing. And that bothers me a little bit.
I'll introduce the two of you, and that might even be something. I've been invited to host another panel at FRLA in September. Maybe we ought to talk about that and put something together. That might be fun. All right. And then just a personal question for you. When you were at University of Denver, you were in the MBA program, right?
Yes, I was.
Okay. So you didn't know anybody in the hospitality program.
No, I did. It was interesting. I knew everybody. At the time that I went, and what attracted me to get to Denver was that they had in those days, they had a specialized MBA program. And I believe that myself and a few others were the first students to the hospitality program. Was one of so I got a degree in hotel and restaurant management, a specialized MBA. And it actually cost me a whole nother semester.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was Andy Devine there at the time?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah. Listen, Pete Kaplan, Andy Devine.
We're 2 minutes over. Stay on for a second, Fred. I got another question for you.
Will do.
Students, I know some of you have another class to go to, so drop off if you want to. Thank you all. We'll see you 2 weeks from today online again. And remember, there's no classes anyplace next week at University of South Florida. And please pre-register for your classes. Start pre-registering now. And tell your friends, remind them that we're offering the hospitality program on all 3 campuses, Tampa, St. Pete, and Sarasota, Manatee, without having to commute. We're gonna mix synchronous, what we're doing here, with live classroom. We'll just rotate as we go around. So tell your pals, we got to get our enrollment going up, guys. All right, thank you. Thank you.